Just the way it is. All right, who's excited?
I am.
Okay, you are. You're the only one. That's so fantastic. All right, who's excited? All right, so here's the thing. Just a quick question for you guys. Has anybody ever had challenges like doing what they say they were going to do? Like, did you ever, like, am I'm the only one that's like, I'm going to do this, I'm just going to do it, and it happens for the rest of my life, and that's the way it is. Like, I'm not going to eat sugar for the rest of my life, right? And here you are, like, lunchtime, you're having an ice cream. I think the point is that, you know, whether it comes to food, whether it comes to relationships, whether it comes to turning off our Netflix there, whether it comes to, we look at the things that we know we should do. Does that make sense? We all know, like, if I did this, 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 and this, our whole life would change, right? If I just kept doing this one or two things. In fact, we all know one thing that we can do that would forever transform our health. Problem is, we don't do it, right? And it comes down to not the what, but the why. And that's really what tonight's about. It's about the first step in that transformation process. That's what Dr. Sherry is going to be covering. Obviously, he's my favorite person to listen to. That's why I just sit here and listen to him. Every last time he spoke, I don't know if you guys saw me in the back, I was taking notes because he was telling me stuff that I'd never heard before. So, like, he has been preparing for weeks on this, and it's all about that next step for that cruise ship we're making home, nursing home, because we decided this year that we're done. We're done with just being average, meaning that we're like accepting people just kind of being mediocre, and that's why we started this season where we're going to really focus on mindset. And then guess what we're going to do? We're going to move into the makeover in November. Guess what most people are beginning to do in November? Give up all their goals, all their ambitions, all their like health and everything like that, and literally suffer for the next 2 months for just literally 2 days of holiday, right? So that's what we want to do, is so we don't have to have people say, make all these New Year's resolutions of what they're going to do in January, but really where they have them ready for January to have the most extraordinary year in 2020. So this is going to be your 2020 year coming up, and it all begins tonight. Dr. Steve Sherry!
All right. Yeah, listen, I'm going to tell you something. When he told me I got to do this, usually in the past week of these talks, it's going to be like, oh, you're going to do nutrition, or it's going to be sleep, and so it's like one topic. And this time was the weirdest thing. He goes, you can do mindset. I'm like, oh, that sounds great. What do you want me to go over? And he literally goes, you go over whatever you want to go over. I'm like, no. He goes, yeah. I go, you're going to let me just pick and choose? So I was super excited about this talk until exactly a week ago. And I started realizing, uh-oh, I'm in way over my head, because I have like 7 topics that I picked out, that each topic could be an hour or 2 long, and I started going, oh my gosh. So last night, my head was twisting. I'm like, how do I squeeze this all in? So here's a fun thing. I have some really cool stuff. I may have to prune it a little bit as we go through, but I have some really cool things about mind that we're learning. I'm going to teach you some interesting things. We're learning about how the brain functions, how the body functions. When I went to chiropractic college, they taught us that the brain is up here and it has a waterfall of information that goes down to your body. That's what they taught us, a waterfall of information. They said you got to make sure that all that information can get from here down. Good knowledge, except they were wrong. It turns out that the waterfall goes up. It turns out that massive amounts of information are being flooded up from your body into your brain. Your brain then takes that data and makes decisions and fine-tunes on what's happening. As we learn more about the body, we're learning it's way more amazing than we ever thought. So put on your seatbelts, hands and feet inside, here we go. First study I want to tell you, I heard this about 6 months ago and it actually blew my mind. It's called the cherry blossom study. What these researchers did at Emory University is they took mice, put them in a cage. The cage had plastic walls on it, but it had a metal floor on the bottom. The bottom metal floor can be electrocuted. These poor mice were in there. What they did is they flooded the cage with the smell of cherry blossoms. And when they did that, they would then electrocute the floor and shock these mice. Obviously, the mice weren't too happy about that, and they kept doing that over and over. Basically, they conditioned the mice to the smell of cherry blossoms. So they continued to shock the mice until the mice would respond to the cherry blossom smell. Let me get that for you. Mouse is in the cage, they pump in the cherry blossom, and the mice freak out. Everyone knows Pavlov's dog, remember the bell and the saliva? Same idea. They had conditioned these mice to the smell of cherry blossoms. Now the study gets really interesting there because once they had done that, they took these mice and let them go ahead back and breed. They took those mice offsprings, specifically those mice, took their offsprings, put them in the cage, and put the smell of cherry blossom into the cage, and the offsprings all freaked out over the smell of cherry blossom. Now, if you think about that for the next day or two, that's going to blow your mind. They never shocked those offspring. Now, you ready for this? It lasted for at least 4 generations.
Oh, boy.
In other words, what we're discovering is our life experiences are being passed through our genes. Just think about that. It won't hit you for a while. It didn't hit me for at least 2 days. I kept thinking, what is the possibilities of that? Now, listen, the researchers said this. These are mice, they're not humans. But boy, isn't that interesting? That means if your parent had a bite on by a rattlesnake, had a horrible experience, and then passed that in, no wonder you're scared of rattlesnakes. Instincts, all of a sudden, are a little more easy to explain. So we're learning constantly about the nervous system and how it plays out. You're not a slave to these genes, though. I want you guys to know that. Even if you had the cherry blossom gene in, that doesn't mean that you can't retrain that. That doesn't mean that you're a slave to that gene. It's just our way of passing information through, which is pretty amazing. So your brain is going to control everything in your body, but it's a slave to the sensors. Here's another thing we're learning. Your brain is constantly trying to figure out what is going on in the outside world. It sits in a little dark room, and it has to have signals coming in from the outside. The information it collects, it tries to create a picture of what's happening on the outside. But more recently, we've discovered it's also drastically trying to pick out the inside. What's happening on the inside? What information is coming in? So, sight is telling you, touch is telling you, hearing. We all know the 5 senses, right? Taste, smell. Those are the things that your body's being flooded with. We all learn. Remember, we all learned the 5 senses, yeah? What they didn't teach us is another sense. And it turns out the next sense is actually way, way more important. And it comes from your body in the form of mechanoreceptors. Motion receptors, movement receptors. We're finding out that we are these awesome motion machines. We're designed to move. And every time you move, you're firing these little motion nerves that flood your brain with electricity. It's almost like motion creates electrical currents that generate motion or electrical currents in your brain, and that's what keeps you alive. If you sit, and we all know this, right? If you go and you sit at home and you don't move, are you healthier or less healthy? Less healthy. Now, we've always had, my undergrad's in exercise physiology, so we always had that view of exercise, right? Like, oh, you have to exercise. Remember, they taught us you exercise for cardiovascular health and all that. Now we're finding out it's way deeper than that. If you sit as an animal and you don't move, you're not stimulating nerves, and they don't send signals up to your brain, and you slowly die. Motion runs you. But more importantly, that motion is constantly sending your signals up to your brain to tell your brain what's happening in the world around it. Learning, it's actually giving you information about your organs as well. So when those segments don't move, you're missing data points. And here's the crazy thing, guys. If you don't get data points, your brain, ready for this, fills in the blanks. Really interesting. In other words, if you don't tell your brain what's happening on the outside, your brain makes assumptions based on past experiences and possibly past experiences from what? Your parents, your grandparents, and your great-grandparents possibly. So your brain has to have the whole picture, and if your senses only give it a part of that, your brain has to fill it in. It's got to create a picture of what's on the outside. We all have slightly different perceptions because our brain's getting different senses, right? And so the question is, when the researchers started finding these mechanoreceptors, these little nerve endings, they started saying, wow, this is amazing things. Motion sends the brain tons of information. And so a lot of researchers about 10 or 15 years ago started saying, okay, we get the value of these little nerve endings. They're really, really important. And then they said, where are they? By the way, you want to see how they work? If you ever hit someone in the arm, if I get a volunteer to come up here and slug me in the arm, what I will do is I will grab my arm and start rubbing my arm. As I'm asking them why you hit me so hard, right? Now, what's interesting is when you stimulate motion nerves, they actually turn off pain nerves, which is why you rub an owie, because mechanoreceptors are great at shutting off pain. You get rewarded with motion. If you don't move a joint, it slowly gets painful. If you move it, it sends a signal to your brain, but it also turns off pain receptors, which is why we like you to move. Which, by the way, once that came out, every chiropractor on the planet went, boom, that's how it works. That's how the person comes in with a neck pain or low back pain, and I put motion in, and they stand up and go, oh my God, I don't know what you just did, but that was amazing. What did I do? I just stimulated a ton of mechanoreceptors. So now these researchers are figuring it out, and here's what they ask. If these little nerve endings are so important to my health, we should find out where they are. Where are these motion nerves? And guess what they discovered? 50% of the mechanoreceptors in the human being are in your spine. They line your spine. And are you ready for this? 25%, a gigantic number of them, are in your neck. Our necks are a dynamic area for these nerve endings. Your brain needs it, which all of a sudden it makes sense why when people have these horrible postures, why their health is so bad. Because they can't move their necks, they're losing all this information, their brain loses touch with what's happening on the outside of the world and the inside of the world. The brain has to start filling in for data it doesn't have. It's starting to make mistakes. It doesn't know really what's happening. Is my heart rate high? Is it low? I don't really know. I'm losing contact. I don't know what's happening, but I have to fill in the blanks. And the brain starts panicking, and you see the health breaking down. So in here, I want to show you, I put this picture specifically. One of the coolest things when they found out, you see all these little muscles right here? I think I have a better picture. Here. See these tiny little muscles that go from every vertebra? When we were learning about them, I remember being in the human performance lab, we were looking at anatomy, and I didn't ask this question, but one of the students did, and I really thought it was a smart question. He raised his hand and he said, ready for this? Why do we have those? Why do you have a set of muscles that go from the second vertebra in your neck to the third vertebra in your neck? Why do you have a muscle that goes at an angle, different angles, up and down and everything? Why would you need a muscle that goes from one segment to the next one? Can any of you right now look at me and say, here what I'm going to do, Dr. Sherry, I'm going to take my second vertebra in my neck and I'm going to tilt it on the third. You can't do that. We don't have the ability to fire these small muscles independently and move. So the question was why? Here's what the instructor said. The teacher said, they're for stability. He said they're for stability. Those muscles contract and they stabilize the spine. We all wrote it down. It made sense. It doesn't make sense anymore. It wasn't the reason. When we take a look at those muscles under a microscope, they are literally black with mechanoreceptors. They have so many nerve endings in them that now researchers are saying, oh, these muscles aren't for stability. You know why they're not for stability? They're tiny. They're tiny little muscles. They don't have hardly any strength at all. Their cross-section is really small. They're actually fairly weak muscles. They're not really good stabilizers. You know what they are? They're there for sensory. They're there to tell you all the motion data. These are where all the mechanoreceptors are hiding. Those little muscles, all they are doing is telling you where you are in time and space and telling your body how it's moving. Your brain counts on that motion to actually relate to the world around the outside. And I'll show you some other things. They were too small. You can't move that way. The cross-section is too small. They have full of mechanoreceptors. They're more for sensors. And they're all in that spine. And again, 25% in your neck. I'll show you some interesting studies in a second about tie that back in. We're going to watch this video. This video is made by Heidi Havoc. She's a chiropractor in New Zealand, and she is really cool. We just saw her at a seminar in Florida over last weekend. I call her a hero and a warrior for her profession. She's one of these unique doctors who also has a PhD in neurophysiology. So she practiced for 10 years, and now she teaches at the New Zealand Chiropractic College, and she gets the opportunity to only do research for us. And she is great. And I'll tell you one of the reasons I love her. She stands on stage and says, I do research for chiropractors, but I don't do any research with chiropractors. I refuse to do any research with chiropractors. And she said, because you know why? I'm biased because I'm a chiropractor, and I want people who are unbiased in the studies. And she goes, I only want to be published in the best journals. So she has got some, I'm going to show you some great studies. She put this together. I want you to watch this video. We're going to have another one in a minute on this, so let's have a watch.
know that your brain and central nervous system are constantly changing? It's quite amazing. From one day to the next, your brain is not the same. This is what scientists call neuroplasticity. So what's the cause of this change? Well, to start with, your brain receives a constant supply of messages about your body and the external environment from the sensory organs. That's your eyes, your ears, your nose, tongue, skin, and so on. With this information, your brain maintains a 3D map of your body and keeps tabs of what's going on outside of your body. Your brain needs to interpret all of this data from your senses. It translates the information it receives based on what it's learned from your past experiences, as well as its expectations for the future, its preferences, and more. You could call this the brain's bias. There is basically a lot of background processing that happens under the radar. So how you or your brain sees a situation may not be entirely accurate. That means your experience isn't 100% based on reality, but is instead a perception of reality. Let's look at an example of how the brain fills in the blanks. Look at this picture and consider which square is darker, square A or square B? Which is darker now? It's incredible, isn't it? Your brain doesn't just see what the eyes tell it. It interprets what the eyes tells it, based on other information it has already stored up. In this case, you see square A as darker than square B because square B is in the shadow of the green cylinder, while square A is outside the shadow. Based on your brain's past experience, it will decide for you that if a square in a shadow reflects the same amount of light as a square outside the shadow, then it must be a lighter shade of grey. So what happens if your brain's map of the body is inaccurate, or if it's interpreting information based on faulty perceptions? It may mean that your brain responds to environmental cues ineffectively. But how would you know if your brain's map of the body, or its knowledge of the environment, was inaccurate? You may find that you become a bit clumsy, that you stub your toe often, or catch your elbow on door frames. You may find that your golf swing is out, or that your concentration is just not what it used to be. Or you may be overreacting emotionally to a situation. In the next video, you will find out how chiropractic care can help reset the function of the brain and the central nervous system, improving the accuracy of your brain's map of the body and the environment, so that you can operate at your best.
Good, I wanted you guys to see. So when I first saw her do that, the square thing, it blew my mind. Now, when you see it on video, to be honest, you could be like, oh, is that trickery? So she actually has it on a handout, and I think I have it. If not, I'll bring it next week. So you can actually look at it on a piece of paper and then flip over and compare the two colors. I sat there when I first saw that, and I flipped it back and forth for like 10 minutes. I'm like, is that really what I'm seeing? Like, you guys all saw that, right? How that square looked dramatic. And it was weird, because you flip it over, and they're the same color, and you flip it over, and they're not the same color. And you flip it over, and it's uncanny that your brain actually does that. Like, your brain doesn't. Heidi Havoc. Yeah. Here's another study she did. I want you guys to show this. It's very cool. So she had people lie down, and they measured the arm position. Okay? And then what she does is she adjusts them, and then have them reposition the arm. And then they took people who didn't get adjusted and tried to reposition the arm. And what they found out is after you adjust them, after you stimulate mechanoreceptor nerves, you give that brain all that information, the person's able to put their arm almost exactly in the same spot. If you don't do that, you get it close but not exactly close. So she's showing that, hey, once we adjust you, you actually are physically able to move more accurately. By the way, how important is that for athletes? Huge. That study, so we adjust the Barracuda, the San Jose Sharks minor league team. Guess which study I have told both of their goalies about? That study. I go, hey, tell me something. If the puck is shot to you and you're here or there, is that a big difference? And they both went, yeah. I go, yeah. That is called a goal. That's called you go to the NHL, right? And they're both like, I get it. So guess who's almost always in there when we come in? The goalies always show up. By the way, if you want to know how athletes get adjusted, listen to the chiropractors that have gone to the Olympics. They almost always tell you when they get to the Olympics, their message box is usually packed with notes from athletes saying, where are you, where are you, where are you? Okay? By the way, the only reason there's a chiropractor there is because the athletes demand it. Way back in the 90s, the athletes said, we want a chiropractor there. And guess who almost always all those notes are from? The gymnast. Because the gymnasts know how important it is to know where they are in time and space with balance. It's crucial for them. The difference of a gold medal is that much, that or that, that or that, okay? Here's another one, watch this one. It's some of the same, but you'll see a little difference.
We know that your brain receives information about your body from the environment, from your sensory organs, such as your eyes, your ears, and your nose. But did you know that the muscles in your body are also sensory organs? As your body moves, muscles stretch, and this information is sent to your brain so that it knows what your body is doing. When you think of muscles, you probably think of your biceps and triceps. You won't necessarily think of the small muscles close to your spine and skull. These small muscles do in fact play a very important role. They tell your brain what your spine is doing, which represents what the core of your body is doing. But if your spinal segments begin to move in a dysfunctional way, for example due to an injury or bad posture, that communication between your spinal muscles and your brain becomes distorted, which means you have a communication breakdown between your brain and your body. If your spinal segments aren't moving correctly, it may cause background noise for your brain, or your brain might not get adequate information about what's happening in your body, and will therefore have to fill in the blanks. Let's explore an analogy. Imagine for a moment that you've lived in a house all your life, and that in this house there's a long dark corridor with no windows. At the end of the corridor is an electrical fuse box. Now imagine that the circuit breaker to the lights has blown, and you're pitched into complete darkness. Would you be completely helpless? Or could you walk down that corridor and turn the circuit breaker back on? Of course you could. You've lived there all your life. You would know roughly how long the corridor was and how wide it was. You would be able to get down there and turn the lights back on. Your brain is just as smart as that. It can function even if there's parts of the body that it cannot see. It will be able to function and control those parts of your body because of its past experience. But now imagine that before those lights went out, your kids had left a bicycle in that long corridor that you had not seen. What would happen in that scenario? You would likely fall and hurt yourself. And this is what happens when the brain is not fully aware of what is going on somewhere in your body or in your environment. You could end up having an accident or hurt yourself. This is where your chiropractor comes in. A chiropractor will gently adjust any dysfunctional spinal segments, or what they call vertebral subluxations, to restore healthy movement. This can improve the communication between your brain, your body, and the environment. It's a lot like rebooting a computer. When your brain can accurately perceive what's going on inside and out, it can better control your body for the situation at hand and move muscles in the right order. This means your body moves accurately, you have fewer accidents, and you can function and perform at your best.
So what she's also, I want to go in a little bit more, is it's inside and out. So one of the studies that was done in Chicago about 6 or 7 years ago, and actually made it like on the morning news, NBC, CBS published a study. A bunch of chiropractors, I think it was Chicago University, did a study where they adjusted upper spines on people. And they just read blood pressure. And here's the crazy thing. Once they adjusted up there, their blood pressure all dropped down to normal. In fact, the results they got from adjusting their upper necks was actually better than like 2 or 3 of the most commonly used blood pressure meds. And it lasted for a long time. It was all in the news. You can go look at like Chiropractic for Blood Pressure, Chicago University. Big news. And everyone said, why? Now you know why. When you fire mechanoreceptor nerves, when you move, what's cool is your brain actually goes into a more relaxed mode. You get rewarded. It's almost like when God put us together, he said, they have to move to be healthy. If they move, I'm going to reward them. I'm going to send electrical signals up to their brain. I'm going to tell them to relax. They're going to get rewarded. It's all good. But if they don't move, if they choose to not move, I'm going to punish them to the end of the earth. And they would be like, what do you mean? He goes, I'm going to make those joints rot. I'm going to make their bodies break down until they figure out to move. And you guys all have seen that. Sitting is now what? The new smoking cigarettes, right? If you sit, our bodies break down. If you go back a few thousand years ago, nobody was sitting around really, right? Like we were all out moving all day doing things. Like that was what we were designed to do. Nowadays we have the luxury of just sitting in front of a television and your whole electrical system seems to be shutting down. And it seems to be coming from all those small muscles. There's the blood pressure. It was a 2008 study. Heidi did a couple of studies on strength. Get this, she took chiropractic students. She adjusted them, monitored their strength, and they got stronger. By 15% stronger. Pretty cool, right? She then took that study and did it on people who had neck and back pain. And she increased their strength by like 20 or 25%. She then went to one of her neurophysiology research buddies and said, look at what I'm finding. And he was blown away by it. And he said, you know what you need to do? He goes, you got to do that on people that have motor neuron lesions, brain problems, stroke people. She said, really? He said, you got to go do that and see what happens. They did the study in Afghanistan. Now, why Afghanistan? First of all, there's a financial thing. But the other thing, Afghanistan has no chiropractors. It's really a cool spot to do the study because nobody has a bias, right? So these people come in, they have no idea. So they have no idea whether they're getting adjusted or not. So it's a really clean study. And she published a study last year. She saw almost a 65% increase on strength with post-stroke people. And the researcher she did it with said, she looked at him and said, Heidi, what you guys seem to be doing is increasing what's called afferent, or signals up to the brain. And she said, you're getting this massive increase. By the way, that researcher, that PhD, was anti-chiropractic when she started the study. She didn't like chiropractors, which, by the way, is great, right? I want that. I want research done by people who are critics. We want that, which is why she picked her. She said this one was anti-chiropractic. She said after the study, she saw that 65% increase in strength, and she said, Heidi, what you guys seem to be doing is stimulating motion nerves, which tells the body more where and what's happening in the body. Therefore, the body can take that data and use it wisely to increase the strength output in the muscles. Is that important? Yes. Heidi said she almost cried when they talked about it, and she said, okay, is she getting to leave? And the lady looked at her and said, oh, wait, before you leave, you guys ready? Can you adjust me? Bedwetting drops almost 50% in some kids. Chiropractors do this. Guys, in the early 1900s, chiropractors have been noticing that. You can go back and pull you old chiropractic textbooks. Chiropractors have been saying this stuff forever. They've been observing changes in physiology. There's a reason chiropractic's been around for 100 years. People come back and go, I don't care what they say, this massive change has happened to me. Chiropractors have been noticing. We didn't quite know what was happening, but we're really on the verge of understanding how this thing is happening. We're increasing brain activity. One of the biggest studies that Heidi did just recently, which I love, was she showed that we're actually increasing brain activity in what's called your prefrontal cortex. The prefrontal cortex is where your intelligence is, and it runs on the good portion of your brain. It's really important. She said, I've only cried a few times in research, but the day that the woman came to me and said, it's the prefrontal cortex, Heidi. When you guys adjust, we're getting increased brain activity in the prefrontal cortex. And she said that was a life-changing thing for us as chiropractors. Intelligence. She said, imagine, she goes, we don't know the studies yet, but she goes, imagine if we can adjust people by putting in motion to their spine, firing mechanoreceptors, and we can increase IQ. No one knows, no one's done the study yet. But we have at least a pathway now that we can look and say, those old chiropractors saw those things, and they were actually observing the truth. They didn't quite understand it, but they're actually starting to see how it actually works. Quick discussion here about brain. Our brain has basically two kinds of nervous systems in it, okay? It has a system that's called sympathetic, which is also known as your fight or flight, which is also known as your stress mechanism. That's what happens when you're under stress. The other model is what's known as parasympathetic. Neither of those two systems do you have to operate. It's all automatic. It just happens, okay? Every organ and tissue in your body has receptor sites for both of those. So if a tiger ran in here, we're going to do stress really quick. If a tiger ran in here really quickly to me and slid in here and it was salivating and growling, what would you guys do? Run! You would all run, right? Anybody want, I used to do this talk for the fire department in San Jose. So I was teaching at the, what's it called when they all get together before they become firefighters? At the academy, right? So I'm teaching at the academy. I've got all these guys and women, they're all in their blue shirts, and they're all listening to stress and how important it is. And I use that analogy. I said, the tiger's going to run in here. What do you do? Now listen, I've been teaching that for 2 years for the fire department, from station to station to station, and I can tell you this. There's not a single firefighter in the whole city of San Jose that doesn't run their ass out of the room when I give them that analogy. They all run. So I'm at this one academy. I go, what do you guys do? And one guy in the back says, attack. I mean, he's, attack him. I had to stop the whole class. I'm like, who are you? Right? Like, who would do that? I don't know. So of course we all run. But the nervous system is great. It's known as the fight or flight, right? It doesn't seem to matter whether you're going to attack, whether you're the crazy guy who's going to attack the tiger, or if you're one of all of us common people who are just going to try to figure out how to run. The body needs some physiology to change. Now, anytime I want you to think of stress, I want you to think your body thinks it's being attacked by a tiger. Always. Okay? So today, when I was driving in, and I wasn't quite ready for this, and I knew I had to take my lunch period to do more prep for it and stuff, what do you think my body was thinking? I was being attacked by a tiger. When I missed the stoplight and I was in a hurry, I was like, oh my gosh! My body thought, are we being attacked by a tiger? Right? When you get in a fight with somebody, your body's like, oh my gosh, we're being attacked by a tiger. Like, it always thinks that. And the dangerous thing about stress, you guys, is it always thinks that. And if you were being attacked by a tiger, would you want your nervous system to respond just, I'll get to it when I get to it? Or would you want it to fire, like, immediately? And would you want it to fire aggressively? And the answer is, you want it to fire fast and aggressive. So listen, your nervous system doesn't have the option to say, is that a fluffy fake tiger or is it a real tiger? Because if you take a moment, you're dead. So your body will always fire massively, and it'll always fire really powerful. Okay, powerful and fast, that's how it does. That's how it's always going to respond. The key for us as human beings is if you can live in parasympathetic, if you can live in that tone, both of them are firing, but if your sympathetic is firing, if you're under a lot of stress, your body's going to die early. You just die, you die of stress. Your battle in life to be healthy and have a quality life and end up on a cruise ship and not in a hospital is to live in parasympathetic tone. To live in the casual rock, shocking, right? That surfer guy thing, you know? Easy go, bro, all easy. Those guys surprisingly live longer because they're just easy go, right? They're not overstressed about stuff. Take a look when the tiger comes in, and I want you to notice some of the symptoms. These are the things that the body does the minute you miss the red light or the green light, or the minute you get in a fight with somebody, or the minute somebody, the second like that. Take a look. You guys all know this one, right? My heart rate goes up. What about your blood pressure? What does it do? It goes up. Why? Here, I'm going to run out of time, so I'm going to go fast. You know why? Because you have to use muscles. Whether you're running or fighting, you need muscles. That delivers oxygen and glucose to the muscles. Immediately increase the blood pressure and the heart rate. What disease is that? Cardiovascular disease, right? There it is. You go to the medical doctor and they take a look and go, okay, your heart rate's up and your blood pressure's up. Come back next week, your heart rate, your blood pressure, your heart rate. What are they going to do? They're going to give you drugs. They're like going to freak out because your heart rate and blood pressure are up. They want to drop it, but here's the crazy thing. Here's the nuts. If you live in a stressful environment and your heart rate and blood pressure up, and the doctor gives you drugs to artificially drive it down, let me ask you something. Just think for a second. Does your brain go, oh my gosh, thank God someone fixed that problem? Your body goes, wait a minute. There's a tiger in the room, and I need to increase. It goes up. Every doctor knows you're going to have to keep giving you more. Because you're fighting against your natural law. Your body thinks I'm fighting a tiger. Listen, your body doesn't go, this is a luxury. Your body says this is life or death. Life or death. This isn't a fun time. I'm being attacked by a tiger every single morning. I'm going to increase so I can fight. My glucose and blood pressure need to go up. Okay, increase cholesterol levels. Anybody ever seen that? But weirdly, increase LDLs and decrease HDLs. That's the blood work that they're always worried about. You know why? LDL, those cholesterol, goes in and makes hormones, but it makes like sex hormones. That's pretty cool, right? The LDL, right here, the bad one, HDL makes sex, LDL makes stress hormones. So if I'm under stress, by the way, under stress, does sex desires go rapid? Like, is a tiger come in, do I like, oh my gosh, she's such a cute tiger? No. Sex drive goes down. Fertility goes down, right? No one's making a baby when you're being chased by a tiger, right? Like, you know what? I think I can do that tomorrow night. I'm busy right now, right? But I do need stress hormones like cortisol and things like that your body needs. Your body's in an emergency situation. Hey, this system was designed to be short and fast and brief, not a long time. So up goes the cholesterol levels for stress hormone, down goes the cholesterol for sex drive. I don't need that. I will deal with it later. Energy conservation, okay? The brain is amazing. I love, this is my favorite one. Clotting factors go up in the blood. If you can't think that's amazing, you're missing the boat. Your blood gets thicker when you're under stress. How cool is that? Why? Because our ancestors got attacked by these things and they bled. Your body's like, whoa, sharp claws, big teeth, I might bleed. Increased clotting factors. By the way, heart attack and stroke, anybody? It's right there. That's where it is. Your brain's doing it to yourself because you're living in a stressful environment, right? Here's some other ones. Blood glucose goes up. Glucose is the sugar we use for muscle strength. Is it wise to have a bunch of extra sugar in the body to fight off stress? 100%. Boom, you get it, right? It increases acidity in the body. Insulin resistance. Oh my gosh, why? Insulin is the only hormone that'll take glucose out of the blood and put it in cells. Insulin is a danger to me under stress because I need energy. I'm about to fight a tiger. The last thing I need is to go, all right, tiger, oh boy, I'm tired, right? So your body goes, no, we're going to ramp everything up. I'm going to give you a ton of sugar in your blood to fight, and I'm going to shut down the insulin so that none of it will disappear into the cells. Pretty smart, right? What disease is that? Diabetes. Heart, I've just covered, you guys are seeing it, right? Heart disease, diabetes, it's all tied to where? Our own brains. Our own brains are doing it. Our own brains are creating the environment. And it's not a bad thing. I'm here to tell you it's an awesome thing. It just wasn't designed to be chronic. It was designed to be short-term and then released. You get increased sensitivity to pain. How crazy is that? You guys ever get that? You get under stress and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm really sore in here, right? What we think has to do is, in the short term, people argue this one time. In the short term, right, when a tiger first comes in and takes its first swipe at me and gashes my leg open, in acute stress, the pain receptors actually get shut off. In short term. In chronic stress, increased sensitivity goes up. Your body goes, wait a minute, this is something big. I'm going to increase the sensitivity so I know what's happening. Okay? Soak that one in. Cortisol shuts your immune system off. When you're stressed, your body is going to actually shut your immunity down. Well, wait a minute. Doesn't the tiger have bacteria and viruses, and won't I get an infection from the bite or the scratch? And what's the answer? Yes. But I will deal with that when? Later. I'm not going to waste any energy with immunity right now. I will deal with that infection later. Right now, I've got to fight for my life. Increased muscle contraction, you all know that. Nobody comes in and says, oh my God, I've had the most stressful week and a half, and you can't believe how just beautifully relaxed I am. Right? If you find that person, bring them to me. Never, right? Muscles get tight, and as a result of tight muscles, guess what you get? Lack of range of motion. You get lack of range of motion, you stop firing off mechanoreceptors. You see how the wicked circle happens? Decreased fertility, sex hormones and sex drive drop. There's another one that's not on here, digestion. Digestion shuts off, right? So I just stuffed my face with a muffin. Oh, that was delicious. And the tiger comes in, right? And I go, wait a minute, you're shutting off blood to my stomach for digestion. Shouldn't I digest the muffin? And here's the rule. No. If he eats me, I'll let him use the energy to digest the muffin, right? I don't have time to digest stuff right now. All those chronic stress things, you guys see how they lead to disease. People have upset stomachs. It's because they're living in sympathetic tone. We got to figure out how we get parasympathetic. Turns out, when you move. One of the best stress reducers, once you get adjusted, people go, oh my gosh, I feel good, muscles are relaxed, and you start walking, you relax. The act of walking is massively relaxing to us. Why? You're firing mechanoreceptors. The body starts getting power, and you get rewarded for motion. Remember, God told you, He promised you, if you move, I'll give you a reward. I'll let you relax. Interesting, though. People go, oh, run. So here's an interesting debate. If walking is so good, shouldn't running be really good for us too? Listen, here's the debate. Yeah, I'm going to fire more mechanoreceptors, right? However, would I be confusing my brain? If I'm running, your brain's doing this. Are we okay? Like, is something chasing me? Right? Your brain, but if you're walking, your brain goes, things must be pretty good. If I'm walking, nothing's chasing me. If I'm running, your brain might be thinking, wait a minute. Is there something chasing me? Walking seems to be the magic trigger. Women that walk 20 minutes a day at Northridge State, they did a study a long time ago, decreased their chances of breast cancer by 40%. 40% is a huge number. Why? Because they're moving their body away from an acidic environment and towards parasympathetic tone. By the way, parasympathetic is just all the opposites of this. All the opposites. Motion, 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 and we're finally starting to figure out why it works. It's all these little spinal muscles along here that fire and create relaxation in our body, specifically our neck. Here's how they work. Motion, I told you, run, we went through it a little bit. We got to get segmental motion. I've seen people go, they come into the office and they go, I work out all the time and I'm still having these problems. I go, yeah, but that's global motion. We're the segmental guys. I got to go make sure that whole thing is moving so that it moves. And you guys have all seen your x-rays. You all know where those little spots are that aren't moving. Here's a big one. Spinal dysfunction, subluxation, appears to downregulate a very, very important nerve. The vagal nerve. Don't worry about remembering, just know there's a nerve that drops down from your brain and it runs your heart and it runs all these organs. And nowadays they're starting to call it the anti-inflammatory nerve. It is an extremely powerful parasympathetic nerve. The bad news is when we get subluxated in the upper part of our spine and at T1, T2, right there, which is where you get pressure when you lose the curve on your neck, it seems to downregulate that nerve, i.e. shut it off. Now, according to, here's the study I want to show you. I love this study. It was done a long time ago. We went to senior citizen homes, and they took a look at about 6,000 people. And they did questionnaires on them. What do you eat? How much do you exercise? What do you do during the day? Blah, 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 blah. All good stuff. But as a chiropractor, the one thing they did, which is really cool, is they had them stand against the wall. And they just measured how far forward their head was. Okay? Remember, the head's supposed to be like this. They just measured it. And they followed it for 6 years. So it's a big study. A lot of people in the study for a long time. And they took a look and they wanted to find out what these people died from, right? What they found is a direct connection between the further the head was, the more likely they died during that 6-year period. Now, when that came out, we were like, oh, that's interesting. Why? Now we understand a little bit more why. Side note, most likely they died of heart attacks and strokes too. When they ran the numbers, they go, these people were more prone to dying of heart attacks and stroke in that 6 years than anybody else, the further you were forward. Okay? And that's not the only study. There's a lot of them like that, showing you net things. Okay, chiropractic doesn't have the research yet to prove we stop heart attacks, but we now have a potential pathway to show what those chiropractors were finding back in the early days. Okay? One more thing on this. Stress shuts off the small muscles that I was showing you and tightens up the big muscles, which can create these problems we think. Right? After 6 months of an injury, those small muscles are atrophied or dwindled down. That's scary stuff because they're such keys for the knowledge in your spine. Okay, that slide, I'm going to skip because I'm going out of time. That slide just shows you how important motion is to your body, how important it is to move, what it does to keep everything working properly. Got to show you this. When we were to school, they showed us, they said the nerves fire what's called an action potential or nerve. Your brain gets the signal, action potential, electrical current goes up, and boom, things work. Which always was mind-blowing, right? Like, really just electrical current just passes information up? Like, how does it do that? How does it know what information it gets? But it does. But recently, they've made another discovery which is going to affect all of us. The nerves actually vibrate when the nerve. So when the electricity is going through your nerve, it actually oscillates back and forth. That is a little bit more important than the smell thing of the blossoms I told you. Because if you're losing the curve in your neck and you're putting your spinal cord into a traction, guess what doesn't vibrate very well? Any nerve that's being traction. All of a sudden the picture gets even bigger and worse. If you're out here and your spinal cord's traction and you're trying to send electrical currents which need kind of a wave to follow it down, it doesn't work as well that way. Which explains why when you take nerve tissue and stretch it, it doesn't work. All of a sudden it's like, oh, this thing kind of vibrates when the signal goes down. Okay? So this picture here, this guy with his head forward has his whole spinal cord being traction. Things aren't working well. All of a sudden we're seeing more dysfunctions that way. Oh wait, I forgot one sense. Really important. and that's your internal voice. Your internal voice, how you talk to yourself. I heard this story. This woman had gone through a bad relationship. She was deciding to start a date online. After a few months of talking and talking, she finally found this guy to go on a date. She was super nervous. She lost some weight. She went out and bought a nice dress. She went on this great date. She got to the restaurant. She sat down. After about 10 or 15 minutes, the guy said, "I just don't think this is going to work," and he left. She was devastated. She called her best friend and told her, and her best friend said, "Well, of course. Did you see the dress you picked out? It really wasn't that nice. By the way, you lost 30 pounds, but you probably could have lost 50 more, to be honest with you. You didn't look very good. And to be honest, the picture you took before you went out, your hair, I mean, really, your hair, the color was a mess, and it really didn't look very good." Her best friend wasn't her actual friend, guys. It was her. It was her own voice talking to herself. Your brain listens constantly to what you tell it. Remember, it's in a dark box. It's trying to get whatever information it can from the outside world. And if you tell it things, one thing you'll hear me say a lot, whether it's on purpose or not, if you guys come in and go, "I'm not feeling good, I don't want to get you sick," if you guys have heard me, what do I say? "Don't worry, I never get sick." Now, is that totally true? No, I get sick. But I don't tell myself that. I learned a really interesting thing from one of my first chiropractic coaches. Dr. Osborne was in there too. He's now the president of West Chiropractic College up here. And we were at a seminar one time, and he said, "I've given my children 5 to 6 wellness days a year at school." We said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "I never want my children to fake being sick to miss school like I did." He goes, "So I allow my children to come to me and say, 'Dad, I just don't feel like going to school today.'" And he goes, "Everybody could get a day like that." He goes, "What I don't want is my kids to somehow feel like they can convince their body to get sick, and as a result of getting sick, they get a benefit." And that stuck with me the whole time. That's a really good point. I think it's a really good point. I don't want them to say, if I just pretend I'm sick, or act like I'm sick, or tell like I'm sick, I get bonus points for that. No. Just be healthy and say, "I'll give you a day off." I thought it was an interesting way to go at it, okay? So, self-talk is really, really important, especially when we talk about placebo. Everyone knows about placebo, right? Placebo is the thorn, listen, it's the thorn in the side of the medical world. It drives them crazy. Absolutely crazy. They've spent the last 50 plus years trying to outthink the placebo effect. That's Lisa Rankin. You can catch her on YouTube doing some talk. She's a medical doctor. She says, we can't deal with this placebo effect. People get better. There's a concrete evidence that the body has the innate ability to heal from the inside out. We know crazy things happen, right? Take a look at this. And by the way, here's where she talks. If you want to see these, there's over 3,500 case studies on a spontaneous remission project that talks about cases of people just getting better of all kinds of diseases. All kinds. Placebo effect really works. And if you don't believe it, go look at all the pharmacology studies because that drives them crazy. Absolutely crazy. You give them a pill. By the way, Dr. Osborne made a great point the other day. He was talking up on one of these and he said, studies show the placebo effect works better if the pill's bigger. It works better if the pill's blue or red. It also works better if they give you more than 1 or 2 pills. It seems like the more pills they give you, the better your placebo effect works. By the way, placebo, they treat placebo like it's this horrible thing, right? I look at placebo and go, that's wickedly cool. That's our body's healing. Isn't that awesome? Your body can heal and do stuff. Take a look at this case, though. It was 1957. A guy named Mr. Wright. He's diagnosed with lymphoma sarcoma. He had tumors the size of oranges. There was a study going on this drug, cryobiocin. He went to the doctor, his medical doctor, and said, I really, really, really want to try it. And the doc said no, because in the study, you have to prove that you're going to survive for at least 3 months, and we can't do that. So he continues to beg. The doc finally says, okay, I'll give it to you. So he gives it to him on Friday, expecting this guy probably not to do any better. He shows up on Monday. This guy is doing great. He's walking around the hospital. He goes, Doc, I'm feeling great. That drug was amazing. They do some reads on him, and his lesions are getting smaller. He's like, this is amazing. 2 weeks later, there's a study published that comes across that says the drug doesn't work. A week later, he's in the bed. Tumors are all coming back. The medical doctor says, well, that was interesting. I'm going to try something. So he goes to him and he says, hey, The one I gave you before was kind of the tainted one, but I got my hands on some really, really pure biosin. It's hard to get by, but I'm going to give you the really, really pure dose because you were doing so well on it. I'm going to give it to you. So he got an injection, and he injected him with water. 2 days later, he started going into remission again and was doing great. For about a couple of months, he said in the hospital, the guy's walking around, he's feeling good, things are really, really changing, his lesions are going away, and then the AMA screws the whole thing up because they had done a follow-up study coming out and saying they had definitely concurred that Chiropractic doesn't work at all. He died 3 days later.
Aww.
Now, you could say, oh my gosh, that died as a result of blah, 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 it was so quick. But the point is, placebo effect is real. Norman Cousins wrote a book called The Anatomy of an Illness. He had ankylosing spondylitis. You know what he decided to do? He said, I'm not going to he was a writer. He goes, I don't want to get treated by drugs or anything. I'm going to just laugh. They had him bring in movies and movies of the Three Stooges, and he just sat at home and laughed and laughed and laughed. He wrote a bunch of books about it. He got better. So the placebo effect is out there. Everyone knows it's out there. How you tap into it is different. Do you know your guys' health improvement directly related to how I talk to you? If I describe your health issue one way compared to another, you'll get better. Pretty powerful brain stuff, isn't it? The battle here is to stay positive, self-talk, and stay parasympathetic. You can't let all the little stuff get us down. You're going to have to stay positive as you go through these things to keep healthy. Sleep, we're going to do sleep because this is crazy important. I have a whole hour and a half talk on sleep, but I'm going to try to touch on it quick, okay? Hang in here because this is so important. In the old days, they all thought sleep was great. Enjoy the honey, heavy dew of slumber, Shakespeare said. Okay? Let's skip aside 400 years, 20th century. Sleep is criminal waste of time. Margaret Thatcher, sleep is for wimps. We now look at people who sleep a lot as lazy, and they don't function in the world. They're just lying around lazy. By the way, these things are dramatically horrible for our bodies. Right? And they sell them like candy, and kids are drinking them all over the place. They're absolutely devastating to our health. It all changed when this happened. When the light bulb, when we turned night into day, we invaded the night, and this became a huge problem for us. For thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of years, guys, we lived on a planet that revolved around day-night. Day-night. It's called circadian rhythm. We're used to it. Circadian rhythm is the real deal. You want to hear an interesting study? Back in the 1800s, a researcher took a plant, kind of like the sunflower plant. You know how the sunflowers follow the sun, right? You guys all know that, right? Sunflowers like this. Go out by Davis, a whole field, they're all like this. Sun comes up, they're like, oh, they start smiling, and they follow the sun, right? We all know that. He took one of those plants, took it into the basement of the university, covered it with a box so it was in pitch dark, left it there. The next day at noon, he went down to see what was happening to the plant. Took the box off. What did he expect to see? He thought the plant would just be hanging there. The plant was looking up. He said, well, that's weird. Put the box on it. Came back that evening when the sun was setting, picked up the box. The sun was looking towards the sunset. Or the flower was looking towards the sunset. And he said, oh my God. These things aren't following the sun. They have an internal timing rhythm. These things aren't just following the sun. They know from a pattern. They know what to do. You can take horseshoe crabs from the East Coast. You can fly them on an airplane out here. You can put them in a box that's angled, and they will climb up and down with the tide of the East Coast. You guys see it? It's an internal clock called our circadian rhythm. And you have to honor it because it changes your physiology of how you work. Thousands and thousands of years, okay? I'm going to skip that because we got to move quick. I want to show you Randy Gardner. Randy Gardner was young. He set the world record at 16 years old because a bunch of DJs were trying to see how long they could go without sleeping. He wanted to set the world record. It was done, I think, out in the Valley of California. 16 years old, Randy Gardner wanted to stay awake and set a record. He and a couple of his buddies decided to do it. He starts staying awake. His two buddies say, we'll help you. So they're keeping him awake. And he gets this kind of out on a radio station, and researchers come from Berkeley to start watching to see what happens to him. And take a look at what happens to him. After 2 days of zero sleep, Gardner's eyes struggled to remain focused. He had signs of ataxia. Ataxia means he was like almost drunk. After just 2 days, by the way. Okay? He had the inability to repeat simple tongue twisters. Difficulty identifying objects, basically permanently untouched. They just say, what is that? He was like, I don't know what that is. 2 days of staying awake, he started losing it. Okay? By day 5, guys, he started hallucinating. They couldn't interact with him. He started hallucinating. Okay? So his health degenerated rapidly. They took rats. They took rats and they put them in cages and they refused to let them sleep. They kept waking them up and they kept waking them up and they kept waking them up. They kept waking them up. They kept waking them up. 18 days of that, the rats died. They died. 18 days. Here's the interesting thing. You guys want to know how long a rat lives without food? Almost 30 days. Sleep is more important than food. Okay? Sleep is more important than food. And if you're missing out on sleep, you're basically starving your brain. I'm going to show you how this works, how healthy your brain needs to be. Without food, keep in mind of that because I'm going to come back to that study in a second. A Maslow hierarchy of needs, okay? Food, water, all that. Food is important, but sleep's more important than food. Okay, sleep pressure. Here's the other thing I want you to realize quickly. There's 2 reasons you sleep. Circadian rhythm, which tells you, okay, the sun's going down, it's time for me to sleep. Right? We all go through that rhythm. Just so you know, if you're a nighttime worker, it's now known as a carcinogenic because people who work during the nighttime get way more cancers than people who work during the day. Because why? It's not how we were designed. It's stressful for us to be awake during the night. It's not what we're supposed to do. The other reason you sleep is a thing called sleep pressure. Sleep pressure is produced by adenosine. It's a chemical in your body. Your body uses a molecule called adenotriphosphate to make energy. And when you exercise, that molecule breaks apart and adenosine starts free floating in the body and it goes to the brain. And it builds up and it builds up and it keeps hitting these receptors in your brain. And the more you have, the more your body's like, oh man, I'm getting tired. Which is why if you go work out a lot, you create a lot of it, your brain's soaked in adenosine, you go home and go, nap time. And your brain goes, time to go. That's sleep pressure. That's not circadian rhythm. That's sleep pressure. More adenosine in your brain, right? The more sleep pressure you have. Because your body's like, man, we've used a lot of energy. We need to shut her down. Okay? Caffeine looks exactly like what? Adenosine. What caffeine does to you guys is it goes and it binds to those receptors and it sits on them and goes, yeah, you're not coming in here. So adenosine can be, your brain can be bobbing at adenosine, but you have so much caffeine on board, it can't hit the receptors because caffeine has locked them up. And they're just sitting there. That's the fake stuff. Your brain's begging you to go to sleep, but it can't even tell you you're tired because caffeine is in there. You got to stop the caffeine because it's screwing up your brains. Which is why you get up in the morning and go, man, I'm so tired, and you boom, you start drinking it. You've got to back off of it. By the way, the half-life of a cup of caffeine is about 8 hours. So if you drink it in the morning, it's still halfway affecting your body in 8 hours. It's a lot, okay? Quick thing on, here's what your brain looks like when you're awake. Okay, now I'm starting to run out of time, so this may be as far as I get. I got a bunch of other stuff, but this may be it. That's what your brain looks like when you're awake. And here's the crazy thing, the researchers look at brain activity. Like right now, if you read my brain activity, they look at brain activity and they're like, we don't get it. We just don't get it. Like there's just a bunch of stuff going on. Like they can't figure out, it's like white noise. All over the place. When you fall asleep though, there's some very specific things that happen. One of them is known as REMs, rapid eye movement. And the other brain waves are non-rapid eye movement. And it's crucial that you understand this. When you fall asleep, your brain waves start changing. And in the beginning of your sleep, 1 hour, 2 hour, 3 hour, 4, 6, all the way out, down in here is what is known as non-REM. You're sleeping, you're not moving, and your brain waves look like this. Woo. Woo. These gigantic waves. You're not doing this. You're not doing small stuff. You do these big, deep waves. And the big, deep wave travels deep into your brain. What your brain is actually doing is it actually appears to be kind of cleaning itself out. It's reorganizing the data points that you've collected for the day, and it's kind of going in like a computer and says, oh, that was a busy day. I've got all this information. I'm so glad they finally went to sleep. Whew, got a lot of information here, but before I put this away, I need to go clean up some stuff. So those big waves seem to go in, and the brain reorganizes. If you've ever done this to your hard drive on your computer, it goes in and starts moving stuff around. Your brain goes down and cleans up, and then it seems to come back up briefly, and you go into REM. Your eyes start moving. This is when you dream. Want something cool? Your brain shuts itself off so you can't move while you dream. Isn't that cool? Automatically shuts it off. And now what it seems to be doing is it goes through your daily activity, what you learned that day, and it starts laying it through. Your memories, your knowledge, everything starts getting put down. Does a little of that, and then it goes, okay, that was good. I'm going to go back and do some more cleaning. I'm going to clean the brain up. And I'm going to go back a little more REM. Okay, I'm collecting more data from the day. I'm getting all the stuff that I learned from the day. I'm putting it back in the brain. Now I'm going to go down and do another deep clean. Notice what's happening near the end of your sleep. More and more REM. Your body's lying down all the memories and all the healthy things. All those little tidbits of information that you need to be healthy are being laid down between hour 5, 6, and 7, and 8. And what are the hours that most of us miss? It's the end hours. How many of you are sleeping for 5 or 6 hours? You're not even getting into the majority of your REM sleep. Your brain is down there organizing and go, oh, I'm so glad I finally had a few hours to kind of organize everything. So things are good now. Now I'm going to start really putting in some of these memories. Let's see. That memory about the flower, I'm going to put, oh wait, are we awake again? You got to be kidding me. Right? Like, oh, I didn't even have time to do that. Right? You woke up and all of a sudden, ding dong, oh, we have guests. Like, I haven't had time to do anything. Your brain needs the full 8. 8's not an ideal, guys. 8's the minimum. The brain cycles, people are doing brain research. Really good book, Why We Sleep. It's written by a guy named Matthew Walker, who's a PhD at Berkeley, wrote a really good book about why we sleep, and he'll talk about that. He talks about how the brain seems to cycle through these and organize thoughts and be healthy. If you don't sleep, you die. Just like the rat. Just like what Gardner went through, okay? Back to my rat study, they did another experiment where they took the rats and they let them sleep during non-REM, but they didn't let them get REM. So they watched them, and as soon as the rat's eyes would start going flicking, they go, oh, wake them up. Wake them up. They died just as quickly as if you didn't let them sleep at all.
Oh, wow.
How important is REM sleep? Listen, it's important, it's just as important as sleeping, it seems. If you deny a rat REM, they die at the same rate as you just don't let them sleep at all. And most of us are missing what? The majority of our REM. Because you're getting up too early. You're not letting your body actually get into REM at the end there, when it's doing most of its work. Here's your brain. It accepts information during the day, and at nighttime, it's got to go back and do all of this. All that organizing. Right? You keep interrupting the guy at the front. This guy is like, wait, we're open again? Right? All that stuff's coming in. He has to have some time to go back into the warehouse and organize everything. Okay? Okay, quick natural sleep. I want you to have a nice cool room. It's important that when your body, there's something magic when you go endothermic, meaning I'm making heat myself, to I'm bringing heat from the outside. Okay? That magic. By the way, that's why it feels so damn good to get in a hot tub. Okay? I'm making heat right now. I'm making heat. My body's making heat. And I jump in a hot tub, and no, my body's like, oh, this is good. We're importing heat. Oh, this is, and it's free heat. And oh my gosh, it just feels good. You guys all know that feeling, right? When you get into a cold bed, it's the worst thing in the world. But as soon as you warm up and your body's like, oh, this is good, and that will put you to sleep. It's one of the techniques. Keep the room dark, okay? There's a really cool light. Light alarms are really good because they actually dim the light slowly. It helps you shut down, right? If you're waking up around 2 o'clock in the morning, here's the classic sign of someone who's overstressed. They come in and go, Dr. Sherry, it's crazy. I can barely keep my eyes open around 8 or 9 o'clock. I am exhausted. And I fall asleep on the couch, I fall asleep, I go to bed, and bingo, I pop up around 2 a.m. That's called stress, guys. That's a classic hormonal stress pattern that you see all the time. Okay, quickly on gut. I'm going to go through this really quick. We're discovering more and more that the stomach and your gut is the second brain. There's more nerves in your gut than in your spine. And we're learning more and more that what you eat plays a bigger part. Remember that old term, your gut instinct? It's actually true. Assimilation is a big one, I want you to realize. Assimilation means it's part of when something is alive, they can assimilate things. And when I heard this, it just freaked me out at the similar. If you're alive, you can assimilate things, and what that means is, I can take a tomato, eat it, and what does it do? It becomes me. Isn't that alien? Like, imagine if aliens came off of a spaceship and just like wrapped themselves around a bush and the bush just disappeared. We'd all be like, oh my God, run, right? Like, that's weird. But we do it all day. Like, everything you eat. So if I'm eating a cucumber becomes me. If I eat lettuce, spinach becomes me. Guess what? If you eat an Oreo cookie, it becomes you. If you eat a French fry, it becomes you, right? Whatever you consume becomes you. But what's happening in the inside of our body, as far as what structures are actually inside your gut, are very, very, very important for your brain. I would recommend, I'll talk about it, but the omega-3s are crucial. The probiotics, you need the good biotics in your system. So we have the good probiotics out there. If you're not using those, you need it. There's also the gut health out there. Those are good products to get, to keep in. A lot of our diets are ruining our gut health, and that becomes a huge problem for how your brain functions. Make sure you're getting away with toxins, by the way. Organic food. We don't want toxins in your body. You want to be getting rid of as many of those things as you can because they denature the way the body works. All right. Reduce your stress. We're in the wrap up. Reduce the stress as much as you can. You got to avoid things. If you have things, one of the things I worked on is I commute. When someone's driving crazy, which you probably haven't seen, but there are a few people out here who drive crazy. When I'm driving, I always think as that crazy driver is a really good opportunity. This is just me, doesn't have to be you. I'm like, oh good, here's my stress test for the day. It's okay, right? I've even thought to myself, it's okay. She probably has an emergency in her family that she needs to get to. I bet her father is very sick and she needs to. Sure, go ahead, you can cut me off, it's fine. Okay? It doesn't always work that way. But I try to like, it's okay. Okay? It's okay. What I don't want to do is realize that she's a tiger and have her attack me, right? So try to reduce those stressful opportunities. Exercise is crucial. You've got to be moving. And exercise doesn't mean you have to put on the leg warmers and the headband, right? It turns out just good old-fashioned regular walking fires mechanoreceptors and grates your brain to go parasympathetic. It's amazing the changes that happen. If you can de-stress, oh wait, real quick. Now, this is more for the female brain. I don't know if you guys came to when I did the female-male brain. Female brains are amazing. You guys multitask. We all get it. Your brains work really, really well. Like, male brains are like, you know, I'm stepping. That's good. I'm not falling. I'm doing great. It's like I'm walking, right? Females don't do that, and you guys all know, right?
Yeah.
Right? I made the mistake of asking my girlfriend on the ski lift one time. I was sitting with my son, and we're going up the lift, and I had him read Women Are Like Spaghetti, Men Are Like Waffles, this book. And we're sitting there, and he leans at me and goes, Dad, isn't that crazy? What? And he goes, women don't have like just an empty box in their head that they can hang out in? I go, yes, that is very crazy, Brendan. And he goes, no, it's just, he goes, it's mind-blowing. I go, yeah, it is. And we're sitting there, and so my girlfriend Tammy's sitting here, and I go, watch this. I go, so, what are you thinking about? And she goes, oh, I was just thinking what we're going to do for lunch. I was trying to think what run we're going to go on. I was trying to think what we're going to do for dinner tonight. And I was also processing, like, tomorrow when we go home, the stuff I have to do at home. Women, you all know this, right? She listed off a list of, like, 8 things, and I looked at her and I was like, and he was like, oh my gosh. And then she does this. We pause for a minute. We're just sitting there on the lift, and she goes, what are you thinking of? I go,
How crazy you are.
yeah. I go, nothing. I was just staring at a pine tree. I go, I literally was just, I looked at Brent, I go, what were you thinking of? And he goes, nothing, I was just staring at the pine tree. So our brains are different. So the reason I say that is women specifically, when you walk, you can't walk and stew on these de-stressors. Our brains, one of our great things is we can think. One of the difference between us and animals, we think, as far as stress, we have the ability to stress about things that aren't even happening. Right? Think about that. You have the ability to stress about things that aren't even... Do you know a hippopotamus would look at you and go, are you a lunatic? Like, you're freaking out about being eaten and there's nothing even here to eat. Like, they would not understand that concept at all. You can drive in your car and totally trigger your stress response because you're processing what? Who's coming to my party for my birthday next month? How's that going to look, right? Your brain can stress... Our brains, we pay a price for that brain. So, when we walk, you have to process calmness. You can't, walking, and I've just noticed women this more than men. Women tend to walk and go, oh my gosh, Dr. Stray, that 20-minute walk was so good. I can't tell you all the stuff I processed in that 20 minutes. I figured out the diet, my recipes, I figured out the schedule, you know what I mean? Like, don't do that. Try to relax, because our brains can override the effects of exercise, okay? Clean up your environment, detox, get that diet cleaned up, get organic food. You gotta sleep 8 hours. You gotta let your brain process. Your brain has to be able to do that, okay? Meditate's great, self-talk's important. You are what you eat. Smart posture, make sure you're getting adjusted. It's key that that stuff's moving. Vitamins make the body work. You only get one of these. You only get one body. You live inside of the body that came with it. You have to treat it well. If you treat it poorly, it's going to break down. We don't have a new one, okay? A couple of funny things to laugh at. I love this one. If you like how I like Far Side, okay? Matthews, we're getting another one of those strange habla español sounds. Sometimes science misses it. You get that? They're trying to figure out if these guys talk. They're actually speaking Spanish. They don't get it, right? Don't stress. Use your inside voice to positive talk your way through the day. See what she's saying? I'm not going to panic. There's a bee in the car. It's okay. Nothing to be fearful. Just pull over and let it out. Nothing to be stressed out about. Good positive self-talk, right? Good positive self-talk. Don't panic. This is okay. Don't let it run on you. And this by far is one of my favorite Far Side cartoons. I laugh at this every time, and if I laugh right now, bear with me, okay? They're fishing. His buddy's the bait. This huge fish is coming up. He's got a spirit. And he says, now, grog, throw, 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 throw. That's me, by the way, and Dr. Osborne telling you guys all the stuff we give you, you have to take action on. Throw. The information I gave you tonight, you have to throw. You got to throw. Don't let it go in one ear and sit there and disappear. Take action. Take a look at some of the stuff you can do. Start by sleeping longer, okay? Make the changes tonight. Tell your friends and family. I can't get this information to everybody, but you guys can kind of share it. Give it to people. Oh my gosh, did you know how important sleep is? You really got to sleep more, okay? Get the word out there. Make changes that you can maintain. This is a marathon, not a sprint. If you go home and go, I'm doing all 8 things and I'm doing them tonight, you're probably going to burn out. Just pick a couple and start the process, okay? One more thing, don't forget the makeovers, number 16. Bring a friend, it's going to be really fun. There's more of this type of stuff, but we get Dr. Osborne up to talk, which is going to make it that much more fun. Thank you guys very much. That is it. I know I went over a little bit, but thank you. I hope you guys enjoyed the time. All right. So, does anybody want an energy like Dr. Sherry, by the way? Yeah. So, here's the thing. We can take this information and just be like, that was a good talk, or we can take action, and that's what this is. This is the starter for the makeover. So I just want to let you guys know, like, by the way, I want to celebrate a couple things. Carol Ann is almost to the point where she's lost half of her body weight. Wow. Meaning, like, she's almost lost her entire self, half of her entire self, and in the process, she found herself. You know, Denise she was walking with a walker, last week, gave up all of her meds this week, and has no walker. See, I just want to remind you guys that that's who you are. You're designed to heal. And so go out and do it, and just remember who you are and whose you are. Have a great night. Thank you. Okay. Hey, good, thanks. Thank
Well, me too. Oh, well, actually, I didn't know it.
I struggle with oh, but I just look at my drink and then okay.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, want to hold no. Or you have to go on. No.
Yeah. I just
go back to that.
Yeah.
I go right back to that.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah. Usually, my husband doesn't understand. Sometimes I do that. I am, you know, and as long as I don't like a commercial break, you know. You too. I'm Faye. Nice to meet you. leaves here. Do you want me to carry your bag? Situated.
I don't know what it is. Don't ask me.